Hey everybody, I'm Tim Ward and welcome back to Garden Sense. Well folks, every year we always take the winter season off, but let me tell you, being gone for a couple of months has got me itching to kick off these videos, and I always know when spring is coming because the emails start to pick up. Well, for this first video of the 2026 season, we're not going to take any questions, but instead we are going to focus on the lawn calendar. Now, if you've been a fan of Rosen's at any point over the last 20 years or so, you know how important it is to follow a lawn calendar, and this year is no exception. So we are actually going to take you through when to fertilize, when to put down weed controls, when to deal with insects, as well as when to overseed your lawn. So buckle up everybody, and let's jump right in. All right everybody, well, we always recommend that you fertilize your lawn 4 times a year, assuming you have some type of a cool season grass like a tall fescue. Now, if you have a warm season grass, you typically don't need to fertilize it as often. But what we're going to talk about here today is obviously the cool season grass, because in the areas where most of our customers live, cool season grasses are pretty prevalent. So let's talk about fertilization. As you know, if you have followed this program for any number of years, we know that we recommend 4 applications of Turf Trust fertilizer. The first application would be around now. We always say the middle of March is when you should put down the first application. The second application is then going to be around, June 15th or so, again, that middle of June time frame. The third application is going to be around Labor Day, and the fourth, final, and frankly most important application is going to be sometimes before Thanksgiving. Now, if you aren't, again, followers of ours, then maybe you're not quite sure why that fourth feeding is so important. Well, let me tell you. When it comes to the March 15th, the June 15th, as well as the Labor Day fertilization, the grass is actively growing. So any food that you give your lawn is going towards top growth. It's going to keep it green and it's going to keep it growing. That fourth feeding is geared more towards the root system and strengthening the lawn long term. The reason for that is that final application of nitrogen and all the nutrition that Turf Trust puts into the soil, the grass is actually going to store that in its root system. It is starting to slow down and wind down its growing season because the weather is getting colder. So it's not going to waste all of that food. It's going to store it in the roots, and it's going to then strengthen that root system for a couple of months. And then what's going to happen is in that very early spring, again around that March time frame, it's going to start to release that when the temperatures warm up, and you're actually going to have a really, really green lawn as soon as it starts to come out of dormancy. So again, in terms of fertilization, we say March 15th, June 15th, Labor Day, and then sometime before Thanksgiving. Now, let's talk about weed controls. Now, when we talk about weed control, we are specifically talking about using Gallery and Dimension. Folks, you got to remember, these are not weed killers. These are weed preventers. And what that means is both Gallery and Dimension create a chemical layer on the soil surface, and that prevents weeds from germinating. So to use either of those products, timing is really, really important. So let's talk about the first applications. When it comes to Gallery, which primarily deals with broadleaf weeds, you want to get that down right around March 15th. So if you are putting down your first application of Turf Trust fertilizer, that's when you also want to put down Gallery. So again, we recommend that first feeding on March 15th. Gallery can be done the exact same day, either before or after. It actually doesn't matter the order, but you want to get that down at the same time. With regards to Dimension, which primarily prevents grassy weeds like crabgrass, you actually want to put that down a little bit later. Depending on how warm the climate is where you live, you may be able to get that down late March, but we definitely want that to go down in early April because, again, kind of that late April, early May timeframe is when some of those grassy weeds like a crabgrass would have already germinated. So we want to try to prevent that. So you'll want to put down, again, Gallery around March 15th, and you're going to want to put Dimension at the end of March or early April. Now, we also recommend that you put a second application of each product down in the fall. Here's the problem though. We also recommend that if you are going to overseed your lawn, you do that in the fall. So if you were going to overseed your grass in, let's say, September, you are not going to be able to put down Dimension or Gallery at that time because it's actually going to prevent the grass seed from germinating. So if you are not going to be overseeding in the fall, then listen up. We actually recommend an application of Dimension in late August, early September, and that's going to again help some of those grassy weeds, things like crabgrass that can start to germinate around that time that would pop up in the spring. So we want to make sure that we get Dimension down late August, early September. For Gallery, September is a really good time to get that down because again, it's going to prevent a lot of those winter weeds. So think of stuff like chickweed in the early spring. Those are kind of the first weeds that pop up. Gallery put down in September are going to help prevent weeds like that. Again, do not use Dimension and Gallery in that September timeframe if you are going to be overseeding your lawn. Now, let's say you do overseed your lawn and you go ahead and do that in September like we recommend. Well, what you can do is actually wait several weeks, and after you have mowed your lawn at least twice, and when I say mowed your lawn, I mean that new grass has grown, you've cut it at least 2 times, then you can safely put down Gallery. And again, from a timing perspective, that's going to be sometime in, mid to late October or frankly early November. So what we tell folks is that if you do overseed in the fall, go ahead and put down Gallery when you do your 4th and final feeding of Turf Trust fertilizers. In terms of Dimension, again, if you overseed, we don't even recommend putting it down because frankly, you're just going to be wasting the product because by the time that it's safe enough to put Dimension down, it's not going to prevent any of the weeds that it's designed to prevent at that point. So if you overseed, you're going to put your second application down in, late October, maybe early November, and you are not going to put down Dimension at all. If you do not overseed, both products can safely be put down in your lawn in that early to mid-September timeframe. All right, now let's talk about insects. Now we have, a group of customers that don't really do any type of preventative care in terms of taking care of insects, and then we have a group that tends to do a lot because they simply don't like bugs in their yards. Now, when I say bugs, obviously there's a wide range of insects, and we have a bunch of products available over at rosensonline.com that can take care of this. But what I want to specifically focus in on right now are things like grubs, because the timing to kill grubs is really, really important. So we actually recommend 2 applications of BioAdvanced 24-hour grub killer. Now, it is a grub killer. It will kill when there are active grubs that are, munching on the root system of your lawn. However, there's also a preventative aspect to it. So what we recommend is you actually put down this BioAdvanced 24-hour grub killer in, late April to early May. That's a time where that larva can, actually start to become active. It's closer to the soil surface, and you can actually help control that larva stage a little bit better when you put it down in late April, early May. Then what you want to do is put down a second application in August, and this is where a lot of times we start to see the grub activity really start to increase. They have matured, they're getting hungry, and this is where the quote-unquote killer aspect of that 24-hour grub killer actually comes into play, because it will actually kill any grubs that it comes in contact with within a 24-hour period. Now, so again, some folks like to prevent grubs because they continually have a problem with them. Other folks don't want to put this product down unless they know there's an issue, and I completely understand. So if you're on that preventative side, you're going to, again, want to put that down in, mid to late April or early May. And if you're on the no, I just want to wait until I see some grub activity, you start to see that activity, that's usually going to be in that August timeframe. Now, again, if you have other insect problems that come up over the course of the summer, we've got a ton of products available over at Rosen's Online that can help. If you have specific questions about something specific that you're trying to kill in your lawn or in your garden, obviously you can always send an email directly to me and we'll be happy to help. All right, so the final, we'll call it a key component of our lawn calendar, is overseeding your lawn. Now, I mentioned a little bit earlier in the video that we highly recommend that you overseed your lawn in the fall, and that process should start, again, around Labor Day during that September time frame. Now, there is a school of thought for people who like to do it in the early spring so they can try to enjoy that lawn a little bit more over the summertime, and that's fine. Again, just make sure that you're watching soil temps and that you do it very early, because if you try to, overseed your lawn in, mid to late May, it's going to be very difficult for that grass to come in. It's going to be very difficult for that lawn to stay healthy. Again, because by June, July, it's gotten so hot and it's very young grass. Its root system isn't established as well as it should be. And so there's a chance that it's just not going to come in as thick and lush as it normally would if you took care of your lawn in the fall. So again, we know there are people out there that love to do it in the spring, and if you're in that camp, that's okay. Just make sure that, we're now in March, you're starting to do that overseed process now, because we want to make sure that that grass gets nice and established before the heat of the summer really starts. But we always recommend that you do it in the fall. If you're an avid watcher of this program, you know that there are a couple of processes that we've talked about over the years in terms of overseeding. I'm not going to get into the specifics now, but really, again, just at a high level, talk about the lawn calendar. And we recommend that you overseed your lawn in that September time frame. And look, once we get out to August later this year, we'll actually put out our annual overseeding process where we'll talk really in depth on how to do that. So again, from a calendar perspective, we recommend that you overseed in September. All right, folks, just a couple final thoughts before we wrap up this first video podcast of the season. Folks, when we're talking about our lawn calendar, there are a couple of things that I didn't specifically mention, so I'm just going to go ahead and mention them here. First of all, Kickstart. Look, folks, there is no specific timing around Kickstart. Kickstart is an incredibly versatile product. You can use it on your lawn, you can use it on your garden, your vegetables, your trees, your shrubs, you can use it on your indoor plants. So the fact of the matter is that if whatever you want to feed Kickstart is actively growing, you can go ahead and give it Kickstart. If it has gone dormant, you don't want to use Kickstart. That's the general rule of thumb. That's why it's such a powerful and versatile product. And obviously, we sell a lot of it. We talk a bit about it as well. But again, I just wanted to make sure that I address that, because we don't have a specific spot in our lawn calendar for it, because you should be using it throughout the entire growing season. The other thing we didn't talk about specifically is killing weeds. And the reason we didn't is, again, because it's going to depend a little bit on where you live and how active your weeds are growing. Anytime you see weeds actively growing, you can go ahead and use any type of weed killer. If you head over to rosensonline.com, you'll see we have a bunch. We really recommend that you use Image. This is the best weed killer that we sell in our opinion. But if you want a different product, again, go ahead and browse what we have. We do sell a number of different weed killers. But again, we didn't specifically address it because there's not necessarily a true and hard time when you should be using it. It's really just going to be dependent on when the weeds start showing up in your lawn and when they are actively growing. That's when you can go ahead and safely use a weed killer. Now, folks, for the most important thing we're going to talk about here today, it is actually time for our annual Turf Trust Triple Play promotion. We actually sent an email blast out on Monday, and man, our inbox was flooded with orders. If you are not familiar with the Turf Trust Triple Play, this is something that we have been doing for years over at Rosen's Online. This is actually where we bundle the Turf Trust fertilizers, Gallery, and Dimension, and we bundle them where you can actually get the starter formula if you'd like, or you can get the maintenance formula, but it comes in the number of bags that you need to cover either 5,000 square feet or 10,000 square feet. So head over to rosensonline.com, click on our fertilizers page, and there you will see the 4 Turf Trust Triple Play promotion packages that we actually have available right now. I know from experience that these usually disappear really quick. We just got in our order from ProTrust on Saturday. We got everything stocked on our shelves. Traditionally, we have to place another order with ProTrust by, end of March because we have already cycled through all of that product. It goes that fast. You guys love this promotion because you are going to save money on the product and you're going to qualify for free shipping. So head over to rosensonline.com and take advantage of the Turf Trust Triple Play. All 3 products you are going to need either now or within the next month. So take advantage while we have this product in stock. Folks, I really want to thank you for listening to this week's video podcast. We are really excited to be back. I want to remind everyone that if you have questions, you just need some help with your lawn, something's going on with your garden, please send an email directly to me, tim@rosensonline.com. We answer each and email email that we receive. So if you've sent it, I promise you that we will respond. If you don't hear from me in 3-4 days, feel free to send out another email because 2 things have happened. Either we have just gotten so many emails we're running behind, or it never went through and we never saw it. Okay, but give me a couple of days because again, this time of year, we can get 40 and 50 emails per day, and it's really tough for me to sift through every single one and to make sure that I'm providing an adequate and accurate response because the last thing that we want to do is give bad advice. So give me a couple of days, but I promise you that if I receive it, I'm going to go ahead and respond. Folks, thank you so much for spending all this time with us today. We are so excited to be back. I hope you folks have an amazing rest of the week. God bless.